Those of you using older versions know what I'm talking about. Once you completed an item, in this case we're going to complete just a simple incoming call. Once you completed an item and it was in a client's history, it was just kind of there forever. You really couldn't do anything with it. So again, reinforcing that all-important idea that everything we do in GoldMine is going to be tied to the current contact record, which is why when I train GoldMine users who are new, I absolutely hammer into their heads that you always have to search for the guy. You always got to bring up your search center and search for the guy who's on the phone before you start completing your phone call. Now that I've completed this call, and I can see it right here in the History tab, what's nice about the newer GoldMine is that if I had linked this to Justin Todd mistakenly, and in fact I want it to be linked to Justin Hill, who doesn't have a contact record, we'll fix that. Back in the day, what you had to do was actually complete a new call for Justin Hill, and then you had to actually remark the correct date and copy over your notes. With the new GoldMine, we can actually go into that mistakenly completed call, which was in the Justin Todd record. We just open that up. And when we're in this properties window for the completed item, I can click this little side arrow right here. And what that little side arrow is going to do for me is let me link this history to a different contact. So it just brings up my search center. So in this case, I want to link it to Justin Hill. I double click Justin Hill. I hit OK. And there we are. Now what you'll notice here is that that call has been moved from Justin Todd and is now appearing in the Justin Hill record. A very important point I'd like to make now is that the Justin Todd record, it is now gone. So once you move an item with this functionality, it is actually moved. It's not, unfortunately, just copied. But this is a nice way to maybe, if we had a ton of notes in that call and we needed to use it or we needed to move it, very easy to move with the new GoldMine. Again, we just bring up the properties on that and hit the little side arrow. The only exception to this functionality is that if we were concerned about an email, like in this case, my email out, we can link that to a different contact record, but I'm going to recommend that you don't, that you leave emails kind of the way they are, because the way GoldMine links emails to contact records is it uses the return address or the sending address. So in this case, this email is linked to Justin Hill because it was sent to this justin@marksgroup.net email address. And if I use my relink button here, and if I link this to another contact, what it will actually want to do is move this Justin@marksgroup.net email address. It'll want to move it to this other contact because in the GoldMine worldview, email addresses can only exist one time in the database. They do have to be unique. So while we can relink things like calls and appointments and next actions, we really can't relink emails easily. I'm going to recommend that we kind of stay away from that. Otherwise, we're going to end up with email addresses in really weird places. So again, that was just brought up my history item with a double click, or even a right click and edit, or right click in properties for those using older versions of GoldMine, and I hit the little side arrow and I can relink it. Let's talk a little bit about Picklists. Picklists are these little pick lists that we get for every field. You'll notice that every GoldMine field, when I click into it, I have this little side arrow. And what that allows me to do is provide an easy-to-use list of frequently used items that end users can go ahead and just simply double-click and put in the field. This is actually something that GoldMine does very well, kind of stands apart within its own range of products, its own range of competitive products in the field. Not a lot of other things do this for the same price point, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. What I want to show you is that once you populate these pick lists with item, and incidentally, let me choose an easier field. When I create items within my pick list, I just simply click New and type in my values. And then the end user can easily select them. What you saw here in my product field was that I actually have product codes. Like I have GIS4 for Gizmo 4 and WID1 and WID2 for widgets 1 and 2 respectively. A lot of people like to use codes in their fields, so you're not always entering in a whole word, you're entering in WID1 instead of widget space 1. In order to make this easy for people, easy for end users to see, we can actually take these codes, in this case WID1 is a code, and if we add this little // after it, we can put in a little comment. So when the end user selects this, everything after the // is ignored. So if they select this, they just get widget 1. Let me back that up. I want to show you again. If they select WID1, they just get widget 1. If they select WID2, they just get widget 2. So again, everything after the double slashes is ignored. It's like a comment. Helps people understand what codes are. You'll also notice here that a couple of these items have a little semicolon right after the field code. What this allows you to do is when dealing with your pick lists, if the end user needs to enter in multiple values, so in this case my prospect is interested in multiple product codes, if I include a little semicolon here right after my product code, when the end user selects that, it actually adds it. Let me try again. It adds it to the product item there, and it adds it as a comma delimited item. So that's a nice way to kind of let end users easily add codes, easily add multiple codes. One thing I do want to show you is that if you are using the semicolon functionality, if you have one item in here without the semicolon like this, if the end user selects that, it's going to wipe out all of the previous codes, like so. So just be mindful of that. Again, if I select the one without the semicolon, it wipes it out. Some other things that we'd like to do with pick lists, and I gotta be honest with you, I don't see a lot of pick lists used right on the contact record like this, even though this is a great place to use them. Where I actually see a lot of this is in my complete dialog. So if people are like completing calls, a lot of people like to have the reference pick list populated. So in this case, it's very typical to see prospect call 1, 2, and 3, so on and so forth. So let's imagine that cold calls or prospects only get 3 cold calls, and maybe they get an email after that. So in this case, we're completing our prospect call 1. Another very popular place I see pick lists used are actually in this result code box. So this is a nice place to enter in. And again, when we're dealing with our code and our result within our complete dialog, these are 3-character codes. And again, we're going to use that double slash to help clarify what these codes might mean. So very, very typical to see things like left voicemail. This is not something that I use all the time. So when I'm trying to contact a client, and I have, particularly if I have a scheduled support call and they're just not around, they're not answering the phone, I still complete my call. I still say, hey, I called this guy, and I had to leave voicemail. Because I want my boss to know that I actually tried to make that call and that I had to leave voicemail. So what I'm actually looking to see is that after I leave voicemail, a couple of times I'll get to see a pattern with a particular client. So again, if I'm in my complete dialog, and what I want to show you is that my result codes for my phone call are different than my result codes for, say, my appointment. You'll see here that my appointment results are blank because I haven't put any in yet. So when you start setting these pick lists up for your completed items, your activity types are different. So my results for next actions are different than my results. See, those are actually my billing results that I actually use for the Marks group. those are going to be different than my results for my appointments. The one other thing I wanted to show you about my pick lists is that once you've spent all this time thinking about what codes you want to use, and then you tell everybody to use these codes, to plug in these values, you could actually go one step further and make it required. So let's say that every call that goes out, every call that's completed in our GoldMine, we need to have this result code, because what you typically see here is that management likes to see big old call reports based upon the results. So how many voicemails are we leaving a day? Are we calling at the wrong time? How many people are saying do not contact me? And how many successful calls do we get? So we want to require these people to enter in this result. So what you can actually do is that once you bring up your little pick list window, you can go to the setup button, and this lets you actually really define how this pick list item should work. Should it allow blank input or not? Should it force a valid input or not? A valid input being something out of this pick list. Otherwise, they just be able to type in whatever they want. So again, sometimes it's not enough just to create these codes and put in these comments with the slashes and tell everybody to use them. You want to go one step further and actually require them to fill this stuff in. And again, if you have people that like to play around and you don't want them to be playing around with these pick list items, you can say, okay, don't allow them to add, don't allow them to delete items from my pick list, and don't allow them to edit items. And in which case, only master users in GoldMine will be able to do that. So again, what I would recommend is that if you're all excited now to get back to your GoldMine and start making up these little codes and putting these comments and start telling people to use them, start small. Start with maybe 1 or 2 fields. Try to set the permissions on the lookup. Go to your setup. Try to do things like force valid, disallow blank. Set it up how you want, and then see how it behaves. Because I gotta be honest with you, forcing people to use these pick lists is often a good idea. However, what you sometimes run into is that, let's imagine I'm not allowing blank, I'm forcing valid on my field lookup here. What you'll see here, that if I try to click down into my notes before I enter in my result, it won't let me. It's forcing me to enter in my result. All I'm trying to do is all I did was I brought up my complete a phone call window as the end user would do, and I'm trying to click into my notes, see if they'd gone to this result field first.